Great. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Sterner. Thank you also to Les for providing us with this opportunity to come together. It's been a great week. Today, I'm here with my colleague Alyssa, and we're talking about reflections of reframing graduate evidence synthesis instruction. What we've done, and I will add as my background, I earned the MLA Systematic Review Support Services Levels 1 and 2 trainings. I've completed those. And let me introduce Alyssa.
Yeah, my name is Alyssa Droog, she, her pronouns, and I am an education librarian at NIU, and I completed the Evidence Synthesis Institute in 2023, I believe.
Okay, thank you. So today, what we hope to talk about is we've been teaching about evidence synthesis together. It's kind of come up through both of our jobs. It's actually written into my job description, but what we've learned throughout this process, and we're going to hopefully identify some strategies for you that maybe you want to consider helping lower your workload, make it more sustainable, and just more productive. So. We'll talk first about the background and our workshop, and then we'll talk about our reflections. Now, here, librarians are often asked to teach about systematic reviews. That's the term they know the most. The second most common term is probably scoping reviews. And we receive these requests to teach graduate students how to conduct these evidence synthesis projects. But faculty and graduate students often don't understand the time required, the resources required, the training structures required for any of these projects. Yet, they do require time. We know how long all this takes. So to address this tension, we developed a workshop focused on helping students critically read and evaluate evidence synthesis projects rather than produce one. Our workshop started primarily in the area of health science and education, as Alyssa's the education librarian, or one of them, and I am the health science librarian at Northern Illinois University. So we cover it more broadly. It's usually directed towards graduate students and faculty. Faculty do come. I don't think we've had many undergraduates come occasionally. They're not like forbidden or anything. We've gone through a lot of title variations. If you put evidence synthesis, people don't really know what that means, or introduction to systematic reviews. You know, that's what we started with. But what we found has been grabbing the most attention was, so you want to do a systematic review. It's generally a 1 hour workshop. It's taught, it's been taught for several semesters, at least 2 times per semester. And most of the people who attend are the PhD candidates at D and our College of Health and Human Sciences graduate students. So,
If I can also add,
oh
we
yeah.
also teach it in a couple other places as well. I know for me, I do a lot of curriculum mapping across our programs. So our PhD in educational technology and their research methods course always gets this workshop as like one of their survey of the different methods. They do phenomenology 1 week, they do qualitative 1 week, they do a systematic reviews week with me throughout that program. And we're looking at putting it in a couple of the other graduate programs, kind of in a curriculum-based approach. So it gets taught in a bunch of different places, not just as an open workshop. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the workshop is and how this workshop operates so that we can move into our reflections on how this has changed our workload. I think the biggest takeaway here is that this workshop is not about how to conduct a systematic review. Most of our graduate students who are interested in doing systematic reviews, often through the consultation process, by the end of it, realize, well, that's a lot of work. I'm not sure if that's actually what I want to do at the end of it. So to kind of get in front of those types of questions that we were getting, this workshop is about how do you evaluate and read one, because most graduate students, even if they don't ever actually do evidence synthesis, knowing how to look at one and read and evaluate what makes a good quality systematic review or evidence synthesis project is a skill that they can use. So we typically, we work around that, and this is what that workshop does. It has 4 parts. In the first part of the workshop, we cover what is a systematic review. We differentiate what systematic reviews are from other types of literature reviews and other primary studies. And the activity is that they do a pre-workshop poll about their interest. Would you ever like to do a systematic review? What are your experiences? Have you ever read one, found one in your search results? What's new here? In the second part of the workshop, if you could go back a slide, Betsy, that'd be great. We look at the stages and the requirements of a systematic review. This is the biggest part of our workshop. And here is where we really talk about assessing a systematic review. Depending on who we're teaching and in what environment we're teaching this workshop, we give them an actual systematic review from that field. So sometimes it's education, sometimes it's health sciences, sometimes it's really broadly interdisciplinary. We talk about different things that make a strong systematic review. What is a good research question? What is the team composition? Where are the different expertise? What are some of the search methods that are used? We don't cover everything that makes a good systematic review, of course, but we cover some of those major things. And the students, via different poll-based activities, take the systematic review they've been given and they go through and they assess, okay, does that team have the different types of expertise required? Does that search strategy look reproducible or not? Where are the issues you might see? What are the research questions? Do we think that research question matches the type of review that they're talking about? In the second part of the workshop, on the next slide, we talk about other types of evidence synthesis. Most of them come in knowing about systematic reviews, and we say, here are some other methods. Here's what they are, here's what they look like, and then we actually do an activity where they take a couple research questions and have to map to what type of review they think that would best fit. Finally, we conclude by asking the same polls we asked at the beginning. How much would you like to do a systematic review? And it's always fascinating to see how some students are more interested or faculty are more interested after the workshop, and some of them are like, oh, never mind, this is enough. But they typically leave having an idea about what to look for when they're reading one of these and how to parse them out. All right, so we are going to move into our reflections, and these are going to be reflections mostly about our workload from having taught this workshop for the last couple of years. Our first reflection is about fewer questions and improved rigor. Um, it has been great since teaching this workshop. We have noticed that there are fewer students that come to us with half-started and poorly designed evidence synthesis projects being like, hey, can you help us fix this search strategy? Because we're kind of cutting it off at the head, especially with curriculum and education. I'm not getting questions from students like that anymore. I'm getting better questions. If I were to do this, how do I think about the screening process? How do I think about something else? Like they are typically better questions. They're also making more informed decisions not to pursue evidence synthesis. We are getting overall fewer questions because they already are making better choices about what would work for them. There's an overall drop in evidence synthesis related questions, and students who do pursue those evidence syntheses understand the rigor required and are better positioned for success. We also have fewer graduate students thinking they can do this on their own. They can't. They need screeners, they need other people. So, yeah.
And the students I get coming to me who still want to proceed with some type of evidence synthesis project, they're already coming with some knowledge of I need a team, and they're starting to build their team, and they're talking to their faculty, and their faculty are already telling future students like, if you want to do this, you'll need a team. This isn't just a 6 month project or something. I recently had a student come into my office. This is kind of an anomaly to what happened. I'm going to do a rapid review. Like, well, let's talk about what these reviews are. So generally, the students that are coming to us are more prepared to work through it, and they are more successful than if we have the students who aren't really just wishing to pursue this type of project and just think it's easier. Um, those projects sometimes don't happen, and that can affect their graduation.
Okay, our second reflection is about increased confidence. This is increased confidence for both us and for our students, we've noticed.
And
So
faculty.
graduate students feel more confident pushing back on unrealistic assignments. I think we both have an example here. I had a student, like before we started doing this workshop, come to me and said, hey, I have a professor that's requiring me to find 3 systematic reviews on my research topic. And I said, yeah, that's not going to happen. Um, so, we talked about that. And by teaching this workshop and also by teaching it with faculty in the room, we are slowly changing the ways certain assignments get structured, and the general knowledge of what evidence synthesis is within our colleges is improving. Again, that improved rigor and questions. And I hand it over to Betsy.
Yeah, one of the examples I can share is that I now work with one of the faculty from the College of Health and Human Services, and we've worked together to design a project so students can get a taste of what an evidence synthesis project might look like, a scoping review. um, but with boundaries on it, with guardrails on it. The reason he wanted this project to exist is because a lot of students are now choosing to do the three-paper dissertation, and one of which they wanted to be evidence synthesis type of review. And so by putting them through, start writing up the background, they have to work with me. And it's not that many students, maybe 10 to 15 per cohort. They have to work with me to improve their search strategies. They have to then, even as part of the grading, I don't grade it, but I provide feedback to the search strategies in case they would want to do this. Then I think they find like 5 articles, like the first 5 articles from their search, like in PubMed Medline, and then they kind of put it through their inclusion exclusion criteria. But because the faculty member has realized these aren't simple little semester long projects, and this is what the students are trying to work on, he wanted to ensure that they get a foundation of what it really means. And I think the reason Alyssa and I get asked to present on this to our colleges and to the graduate school all the time is simply because our reputations have grown, right? And here's our final reflection, sustainability and workload. We didn't think this would reduce our workload. We started it, teaching more about how to do a systematic review, but we're realizing students weren't even really able to read them. And even if you're not going to try to write one, to be able to assess one is very important. And they get some of this work, with the primary studies in health science, but they weren't really with the secondary studies. There are fewer but stronger, more focused questions coming from students and faculty. The faculty come to us all the time too. And I've heard from previous sessions throughout this week. Alyssa and I are both co-authors. We're very upfront about if we're co-authors, what we offer, if we're just advising. What it was I going to also mention was yesterday, I think it was John Meyer and Ann Rao, and in their presentation asked, what were the questions we hate, right? And everybody had 1,000 things. A lot of them were the unrealistic timelines, the lack of teams, poor question format. Like that's a scoping review question, not a systematic review question. They want easy, short class projects. So we're just getting less of that since we've been talking about this. And it's not even just the people who attend our workshops, but it's also kind of word of mouth. This workshop is now embedded and delivered consistently in the curriculum. There's optional workshops for the university at large, and we'll also offer them just on request as needed. Anything to add, Alyssa? Nope.
No, I think
Nope.
I'm good.
Okay. So just summarizing, we've moved away from the how to do when teaching to how to evaluate. It also raises the standards of what students should expect from themselves when they're going to be the authors. We have the fewer questions, improved rigor, increased confidence on their part, and it's increased sustainability. And I think we're both very happy. And this reframed instruction has fostered critical thinking and more informed discussions around evidence synthesis research.
And I'll just say
Oh,
that, like, for me, that sustainability, like, same as Betsy, I expected there to be a flood of questions the second we started doing this. I actually didn't officially advertise that I was offering the service because I was nervous about what was going to happen. But through using teaching and this teaching approach, it's been shocking. Like that I do get questions, but like there's been most of the questions I get result in, okay, actually maybe this isn't going to work. This is the approach that is going to work. So the training that I have and the experience is important, but a lot of the times because of this approach, we're not seeing things that are poorly put together, which is nice.
so thank you, everybody. I'm Alyssa, or I'm Elizabeth. This is Alyssa. We're from Northern Illinois University. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.